Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to take a look at a game by the name of Avanti, and this is a rather unique race game published by Zoc, designed by Heinz Meister. It plays from 3 to 5 players. The box says in about 45 to 60 minutes, but realistically it's more like 30 to 45 at the most. And it also says it's for ages 10 and up, which I believe you'd be able to play fine with slightly younger children. And this is a rather unique racing game in which players are going to be I guess thematically they're going to be playing a group of entrepreneurial hippies who are going around from concert to concert trying to sell products to people. So it doesn't especially make a lot of sense. But the game itself is rather enjoyable and rather unique. It's a game that is technically a race game where you're going to be playing cards to move your cars along a circular racetrack, but in reality it's more of a game of bluffing and trying to deduce what other players might do during their turn. So let me take a moment or two to show you how the game plays, and then I will come back and let you know what I think about it. So here I've set up a 3-player game of Avanti, and the game goes from 3 to 5 players, and each player is going to control one of these race cars in their color as well as one of these pawns. And the goal of the game is to basically win a number of races to collect money so that you'll be able to advance your pawn to be the first to reach one of these island spaces. The first person or the furthest person along when players reach these island spaces will be the winner. And the way that these races are going to work is in the first round, the start player is going to just choose a space, but then in subsequent rounds, whoever's behind will be determining the start space. And what you're going to be doing is you'll set your cars on the start space, and this is the only time that cars could occupy the same space, and then each player is going to play one of these cards, which you'll have 3 of in your hand, and you can see they have 3 different sides, and each player is going to play one face down in front of them with the number, and these indicate your potential movement points, the number that they want their car to move pointing toward the board. So for example, this player might play that. Let's say this player plays this, and this player plays this. Then simultaneously, each player is going to reveal, and starting with the start player in this case, in the first round, that player will move this many spaces forward. So this is the, let's see, the blue player, they move 1, 2. This player moves 1. This is the yellow player. And then this player also played a 2, so they would also move 2. And the way that the movement rules work here is that if you play a 2, or if you rather land on another occupied space by exact count, you move again. So this player would move 1, 2 to land on this space, and 1, 2 again. And that would end the first round. And what's going to happen now is whoever's in first place is going to get paid out based on where the other players are. So you notice each space along the board has a number indicated on it, except for these parking spaces. If you're in the parking space, you don't have to pay the leader any money at all, so this player would not have to. But this player here, the yellow car, you can see that their space here has a 200 next to it, so they would need to pay 200 money to the red player. And you start out with 2 of each of these denominations, which go from 1 through 500, and then also $2,000. So they would, like I said, just play $200 off to the red player, who would now be in the front. Now each player, in this case, played a number that's 3 or lower, and you can see these cards, I believe they go up to 7. If you play a 1, 2, or 3 to move your car, you get to draw another card. Otherwise, you do not get to draw a card, and you could potentially stop moving during the course of a race. So let's say then that's a new round, and now players will simultaneously play their cards, but the first player to move will be the player who's furthest behind, and then it will proceed clockwise from there. So it'll be yellow, then red, then aqua to move this turn. So let's just say that the yellow might want to land on that player, so they might play a 3 if they have one, which they do. So they would play this normally face down, but then the red player might anticipate that that's what the other player is doing, so they might try to play a 3 as well, but they don't have one, so maybe they'll just, play a 2. And then let's just say this is what the aqua player plays. So again, the yellow player will go 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. They get to move twice. The red player gets to go 2, and then the aqua player would just move 1. And again, since they all played lower, 3 or lower, they would get to draw cards. So this is how the round's going to work, and Again, now this player is going to get paid out. They would get 300 from this player and 100 from this player because neither of them are on these parking spots. And the round's going to go until one of a few things happen. Until every player chooses to stop. And you could choose to stop if you have cards on your turn, or you may be forced to stop if you've played all of your cards and you're not able to go any further. So let's just say, at a certain point in the round, players are like that, or let's say like that. And then what's going to happen at the end of the round is a few things. So first of all, there'll be a normal payout for when the last movement's made. Even if you've dropped out of the race, you'll still have to continue to make payouts at the point where you stopped. Second of all, at the end of the round, so after all the players have stopped moving by choice, or potentially after one of the players has crossed the finish line, which is the same as the start line, then what's going to happen is each player is going to get cash as shown players are going to get cash as shown on the billboards that they are immediately in front of. So the yellow player in this case would get this $100. This red player would get this $300, and this aqua player would get the $500 plus the $200 because there's nobody between them and the start line. If somebody had reached the finish line, this one would also come into play as well. So the game will go until that happens, and then in a 3-player game, whoever's in first place, which would be yellow here, would go 1, 2, 3 spaces on here. Second place would go 2. If you're playing with more than 3 players, third place would get to move 1 space on here. Then after players have collected their money and moved on here for their place, they have the option to move forward by paying money as depicted on this track. So 1,000, 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 3,000, 3,000. Then these last few spaces you have to actually win a lap in order to move. You can't move by paying money. After that's done, the round marker will go to the last player. That's going to institute the new starting point for the next race, and then the round will just go again, starting with the player who was in last place the previous round. The game will just keep going until one of the players reaches this island, and the first player to do that, or the farthest along to do that at the end of the game, will be the winner. Alright, so that's Avanti, and this is definitely a strange game as far as the theme goes. It doesn't make a lot of sense that players are racing from place to place to sell goods. I suppose you could make sense of it, but during the course of the game, it won't make a lot of sense. That's what you're actually doing. It does make more sense as just a series of races where players are going to be collecting money over the course of those races. And people don't need to worry about that theme, however, to enjoy the game, because it's one that's very unique. It's one that's highly interactive. You're going to be anticipating what other players are going to be doing and bluffing and double guessing what other players might have up their sleeves, and that's enjoyable. And also enjoyable is the way that it punishes you for falling too far behind, but also punishes you for trying to race too far ahead by reducing your hand size. So there's a really interesting mechanism there, as well as that mechanism where the leader is going to get paid out. So you might move fewer spaces and just be on a less expensive space by choice. And that's an interesting decision that a lot of race games don't have. So there's a very slight economic consideration to be made. Also, the decision to drop out of the race is always something that you're going to be considering. If you have no chance of winning, it might make sense to just buckle down and drop out and then collect the ATMs that are between you and the start line, which could be a large number of them. So you could get a bigger payout by then, especially if you're going to be parking on a parking lot where you're not going to have to pay money for the rest of the round. It might be better to just take that sure thing if you feel like you can't win the race. So there are interesting decisions, and the game's played over a number of rounds, so it doesn't feel overly lucky. You'll have always on each of your 3 cards 3 numbers to pick from. So unless you get down to just one card, you'll usually feel like you have a lot of choice in the matter about how you're going to move your pawn. Again, the box says it takes about an hour to play, but realistically it takes more like half an hour to play because there's practically no downtime. Every player is going to be simultaneously selecting their cards to move and then revealing them at the same time, and executing their movements, and that's pretty straightforward. It's not a game that's particularly fiddly, and it's a game that I think after a round or two players are going to get the hang of and be able to start making more clever moves over the course of the game, which is always something I like. I like a game where players could do well on their first time, and it's just a game that lends itself to funny big moves. If you play a 7 and land on somebody and then move another 7 spaces or whatever, that's always pretty funny. And as are the things that happen when your plans go wrong. If expect somebody to move 2 spaces, but they move 1 space, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in last place or whatever. That's funny as well. So it's a nice family style race game. It doesn't feel exactly like any other race game that I can think of, and that's, I think, a real benefit to it. Overall, it's a game that I would recommend. It was published in Europe, and there are English rules in the international version that I have. So Zoc put it out. I'm not sure of its distribution status in the US, but I was able to import a copy from Europe rather cheaply. So it's a game that I would recommend if you're looking for a party style race game. That is Avanti, and thanks for watching.